Welcome. Our rabbis taught that there are three crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, the crown of royalty. But they emphasize that the crown of a good name excels them all. Marc had a good name. Well, I have a good name too. We share the same name.
Spelled the same way.
Spelled the same way. We like to joke about that a lot. We like to joke a lot with Marc. So if anything, he would want us to be, I think, a little lighthearted today, as we're all, feeling heavy of heart. But as you all know, Marc could always bring a little lightness with him. And so let's remember that today, and even amongst maybe our tears that hold that lightness. So we're going to start with a song from a poem written by Hannah Senesh that I really think gets at the connection between our very short lives and the vastness of the world, the universe, and our connection to it. Okay? Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat hadam, hachol v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, berak hashamayim, tfilat hadam. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of my heart. Zach?
Okay, so I'll start with a bit of good news. I'm out of parents, so this is the last time you have to hear me do this in the synagogue. Talking about my father is difficult. I would say if you ever heard excellent things about Elmira, New York, perhaps Lovell's ice cream or Moretti's pasta, which he was asking for till the end, you probably heard that from my dad. If you ever heard someone extol the virtues of wild-haired, mustachioed men like Mark Twain, Sam Clemens, Albert Einstein, it's likely you heard that from my father. And if you ever heard phenomenal things about the institution that is Mitchell College, it's likely that you heard those from my father, who spent 57 years bouncing around from office to supply closet to handicapped restroom to the dining hall, just trying to get things accomplished. I would say Mitchell was his life, I think we knew that when my father stepped down from his position, that his life would immediately slow down. If you ever heard great things about a woman named Terry Goldsmith, it's extremely likely that you heard those words from my father, who once stood on this bema, accepted the Howard Ilson Award along with my mother, and reminded everyone that neither one of them is there because of the other, but because they always stood side by side, which is something they can now do. So if you were driving in, concerned about the rain, making it here on time, as Sherry said, you might have asked my father to stop the rain so you could get here. But what you really need to do is ask my mother to tell my father to stop the rain, because then he'll do it. If you ever heard great things about my dad, you likely heard them from other people. He was an extremely humble man that would rather talk about theories of Bigfoot or perhaps the coming dawn of UFOs, or whether or not the Mayans really are living under Colorado in a secret town. All of those things would come before he praised himself. So when I finish, you will hear from some of his friends, which are the people who can tell you how great he was, because that was never his best thing. I would be remiss if I did not talk briefly about a subject that was dear to my father's heart. As many of you know, he was a Holocaust and genocide educator. When I was young, he selflessly sat on public access television arguing with people that sought to destroy the Jewish people. And my father was never scared. A brief story for you. In the 80s, the Shah of Iran sent his son to Mitchell College. Mitchell is, as my father will tell you, a place that a lot of royalty goes to learn English as a second language in the summer, or to learn English during the year while being trained in naval tactics across the river. The Ayatollah of Iran sent a small cadre of people to harass and embarrass the Shah's son. A lot of this resulted in hatred towards my father, who would come to his office every day and find a knife stabbed into the door with the words "Die Jew," or perhaps a note slipped into his pocket letting him know that they know where he lives. My father, like he would expect everyone to do, would simply throw that in the trash and go on with his day. Just like when professors at Mitchell College would go on strike, and my father would remind everyone, we are here for the children, we are not here for ourselves, we will renegotiate in the off-season. He was a very, very dedicated person. So I just wanted to say that my father instilled in me a responsibility to talk about anti-Semitism. When he retired, he professed his wish that I carry on for him, which I am doing by achieving a master's degree in his subject. But I would like to remind everyone that while I will not say we're living in unprecedented times, we are probably living with Jews under attack about as bad as since the 1930s. So it is not enough for us to all sit here quietly and say, this too shall pass, Gam ze yavor. Jews are the storytellers of the world, and we must, as a people, endeavor to hold on to the darkness and the horrible things in the world and keep those stories alive so that they never happen again. So I'd like to finish by quoting Primo Levi, something that I think my father would really appreciate. Primo said, even in this place one can survive, and therefore one must want to survive, to tell the story, to bear witness. And that to survive, we must force ourselves to save at least the skeleton, the scaffolding, the the form of civilization. We are slaves, deprived of every right, exposed to every insult, condemned to certain death. But we possess one power, and we must defend it with all our strength. For that is the power to refuse our consent. So hopefully you'll hear some nice stories about my dad now, and maybe some Polish music.
So there is this connection between our Mark and Mark Twain. And he was always good for a Mark Twain quote. I want to point you in this direction, though. Mark Twain, in 1909, he lost his daughter, Jean, very suddenly. And Twain did what I guess any true writer would do, is that to find a safe place, he went off and sat down and just started to write. And did that for several days, actually. And when he sat down to write, this is the beginnings of what he wrote. His daughter's name was Jean, and he wrote in capitals, "Jean is dead!" exclamation point. Has anyone ever tried to put upon paper all the little happenings connected with a dear one? Happenings of the 24 hours preceding the sudden and unexpected death of that dear one. Would a book contain them? Would 2 books contain them? I think not. They pour into the mind in a flood. They are little things that have always happening every day, and were always so unimportant and easily forgettable before. But now, how different, how precious they are. How dear, how unforgettable, how pathetic, how sacred, how clothed with dignity. So there is that obvious link between these marks with the connection to Elmira, but I think the link was a deeper spiritual connection, or at least developed into a deeper spiritual connection, as much as one can believe in spiritual connections. The both had a way of approaching the world with both a lightness and a gravity. For the world and our problems in it are indeed from time to time serious matters, but if we're too serious about these matters, we would find ourselves glumly caught up in a world that thinks too much of itself, or the folly of people who think too much of themselves. I recall the first time I met Mark, he and Barbara Callan met me in the hallway of the religious school. You remember that day, Barbara?
I do.
Yeah, I remember it. And there was Mark and Barbara standing there, and I had come here to interview for the possibility of taking this pulpit. And he welcomed me with the same smile that I think he meant everyone. Although he had questions about what I would want to do with the religious school that Barbara and he shepherded through many years, he kept all those close to the vest, and he was just Mark, lighthearted and welcoming. And then I remember that first summer when I got here, it was playing in a golf outing. And I had not played golf. I hadn't even picked up a club in about a dozen years. I'm wont to doing that, picking them up, putting them down for about 12 years, and then picking them up again. It wasn't apparent to me for the lightness of how Mark carried himself that he was an excellent golfer. And years earlier, I had really come to hate golf. Mostly because 18 holes, it's just far too long to be in one place with business associates who mostly I didn't like. So you just avoid it, right? New to the congregation, new to the area, I was really apprehensive about this 18 holes. But Mark was on my team, we'll scramble, and Mark made it easy. And I developed a kinship with him because he had a way of cherishing the good in people, the good in life, while also meeting challenging people with similar grace, never letting on that he, like Twain, was not one for suffering fools. If you were one of the fools, I doubt you would have known it. Unless you were a real schmuck, and then I suspect you knew it. The part about being a schmuck, not necessarily that Mark let you know it, but that you would just know that yourself. I could always count on Mark to have actually listened to my sermons and Divrei Torah. That is something. He let me know when I hit the mark, or when I just had a good delivery and totally missed the mark. And he was fun to just sit with and pass the time. I think in another life, I'd like to be adrift with him on a raft, perhaps floating down the Mississippi. But really, my best hope, my prayer for Mark, is that Mark really is loved by an infinite love and being held in the loving arms of his great love, Terry. So all I can say is all my blessings to you, my friend. All my blessings to you. Hazan Sherry.
I was blessed to be a family member of the Goldsmiths, and it was hard losing Terry, and now it's hard losing Mark, but I know Zach's still around. Still family. I wrote my bulletin article about him, and at the end, there's nothing left but memories. And we made some really good memories. The three of us, we were the Three Musketeers. We'd travel all up and down in the summertime, up Route 1, trying to figure out who had the best donuts and everything else. But it's the memories of both of them that I treasure. So I'm hoping I can get this song out. It's called We Remember. It's actually in our Festival Siddur, I think. So you've probably heard the words before. Rising in the sun, we remember. In the blowing of the wind, we remember. In the opening of buds, we remember. We remember. of the sky we remember, and the rustling of the leaves we remember. As the year starts and it ends, we remember, we remember. When we're wearied and need of strength, we remember. When we're lost and sick at heart, we remember. When we've joys we yearn to share, we remember, we remember. So long as we live, Mark too shall live, for he is now a part of us. He is now a part of us. He is now a part of us. As we remember, as we remember, as we remember. Thank you. And thank you to Mitchell. I have to say, he underestimated himself, and I've been reading a lot of the comments coming from Mitchell, and it's just been a pleasure. I hope he's able to see them somewhere.
There are a lot of different aspects to Mark's life, and maybe to give a little bit different perspective, I'd like to invite to the Bema Rabbi Ari Rosenberg.
I have the words that my father had prepared for the occasion today because he couldn't be here. But before I deliver those words, just a couple words from myself. My brothers and I wanted to be here today to pay our respects to Mark, who was a regular at the Rosenberg family Seder, and as intelligent and erudite as he was one of the most down-to-earth people you ever met, and a real source of comfort. You know, sometimes you come home to Seder and everything's going fantastic, and sometimes you come home and you're just going through troubles in life. But if I came home and was going through a difficult time and I saw Mark there, I just knew things were going to be okay. I'd be like, oh, I'm just going to spend a little time with Mark, and he would walk with you along your journey. And that's what a true friend is. That's what family is. And Mark was always family to the Rosenbergs and always will be. This is from my father now. I first met Mark in the early 1980s when Terry was preparing for her conversion. Not long after, their son Zachary came into the world, a beautiful baby boy facing a frightening heart condition. Mark and Terry showed extraordinary courage during those uncertain days, and with time, Zach's health stabilized. For decades, the Goldsmiths had become a vital part of Temple Emanu-El. Terry dazzled as a creative, inspiring religious school teacher and as sisterhood president, while Mark teamed up with Barbara Callan to co-lead the religious school. Barbara managed the endless administrivia, I guess he said, while Mark stationed himself in the Sunday school office, where he somehow managed to turn the role of disciplinarian into that of entertainer, amusing the stream of mischief makers who landed in his care. Mark was also a gifted guitarist and folk singer. He lent his music to the Temple Cabaret and played in the Temple Band. On the golf course, he was just as talented as the Temple Golf Tournament, drawing on his days as a, was it Bucknell? Yeah, as a Bucknell University golfer. This year's tournament was in memory of Terry. I came to know more of Mark's roots when I traveled with his son David to Elmira, New York for the funeral of Mark's father. His parents had been beloved figures in that community, and Marc loved sharing stories of his youth there, the colorful people he knew, the adventures he stumbled into, the lessons he carried with him. Most of Marc's 82 years, though, were spent in southeastern Connecticut. At Mitchell College, he became something of a legend, teaching for over 50 years. I twice joined him in his classroom to speak about the Holocaust and witnessed firsthand the easy rapport he had with his students. He wasn't just a teacher, he was a mentor who cared deeply about them. And that truth was reaffirmed just last week when I visited Marc at L&M Hospital. A former student, now pursuing a career in nursing, stopped in to see him. She confessed that Marc had been her favorite professor, an inspiring instructor who believed in her. Marc was like family to the Rosenbergs. He joined us at Seder's. We shared countless celebrations at the Goldsmith home where Terry wowed us with her culinary creations, and Marc kept the room buzzing with stories and laughter. He had a gift for making friends, old and new, wherever life took him. In recent years at Harbor House, Marc's wit and warmth charmed residents. Ever the English professor, he also happily critiqued the literary work of friends, including Dr. John Hellman, who read his stories aloud to Marc and received thoughtful, constructive feedback in return. Each of us holds our own memories of Marc. Zach and David as a devoted father and role model. Molly and the grandchildren as a loving presence. His sister as a spirited brother she grew up with. His colleagues and students as a sharp and funny teacher, his temple community as a generous and musical soul, and his friends like Sherry Barnes, who loved him like a brother. In this final chapter, Marc faced illness with the same courage and dignity that marked his life. What will remain with us, though, is not the struggle, but the abundance, the laughter, the music, the wisdom, the friendships, the celebrations. His passing leaves us with an ache, but also with gratitude, for we were fortunate to walk alongside him, to be uplifted, entertained, and inspired by Marc Goldsmith. Thank you.
So I'd like to invite up now Kevin Kelly to begin talking about that great part of his life at Mitchell. A part.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kevin Kelly, and I had the good fortune to work with Marc for 19 years, a little over that at Mitchell, and I've had his friendship for 27 years. And I'm honored to talk about him today. Everybody here knew him in their own way. He was your father, your grandfather. He was a member of your congregation. He was a colleague at work. You may have been on a golf foursome with him. He never invited me. He knew. He said, one time he said, "Kevin, swing." I swung, and he said, "Nope." So we never did that together. Or so many roles. Peer musician, right? Advisor to the Hillel if you were a student, you had him in class. I could go on and on. You could fill in the blank. There are so many different roles that we all, and interactions. I could do a whole presentation and write a whole paper about the kind of transactional analysis of all of us with Marc. And then Marc, I think, probably would have enjoyed it, but he would have looked and went, this is about a B. But he would let me redo it, and then I could come back and earn an A later. Like many of you, most of you probably, he was my friend. It was just a blink ago. It was the summer of 1998 that we met when I joined the Mitchell family. Even that long ago, Marc was a pillar at that campus. He had been there for over 30 years when I arrived. I was a new dean of students, and somehow Marc appointed himself as kind of a welcoming committee. And I can still hear his voice now. Says, grab your coffee, come on in and pull up a seat in my office, we can chat. And then I go, where? Where can I sit? If you've ever been in Marc's office, one of about 25 on the Mitchell campus, there wasn't ever really a good place to sit. There were books, there were papers, there was this, there was that. And it was endearing and I loved it, but it was a struggle to sort of hang out with Marc in his office, so I often stood. It was about 25 years ago. Marc had just been named interim VP for academic affairs during a time when we were trying to move some stuff around. And I, again, had the wonderful opportunity to partner with him. We worked together. There was the school newspaper had been defunct. We tried to resurrect that to bring it out. The campus radio station was also looming out there. We wanted to get that going again. There were so many opportunities and chances we looked to blur the edges, as we called them, right? We wanted to make life inside and outside of the classroom the most holistic opportunity it could be for students. And during all that time, our conversations always blurred the edges as well. We moved from topic to topic to topic, as I'm sure many of you did. I'm going to come back to that. But, so within a year or two, a new academic vice president was hired, and Marc slated to return to the faculty. And I had a panic because I knew how valuable he was in terms of his vision and insights and thoughts and all the things that he brought to the table. And I knew that he was incredibly valuable in the classroom too. I never wanted to, throw a roadblock in that. But as the joke went, I went into the academic dean and I ended up trading my then assistant dean, Peter Troiano, 2 filing cabinets, a really good desk chair to get Marc to come over and be the assistant dean in the student life area. Pretty sure I had to throw in Dr. Nancy Levine as the player to be named later, but I can't remember. That goes down. Marc and I joked. I look at him always. I go, it was the best trade ever. Because he and I spent about 3 or 4 years being the leadership for the student life team. And during that time, it was a heavy emphasis on moving from a 2-year to a 4-year school and trying to figure out how we were going to do that. Quite the transformational time, and it was difficult, but we persevered. Since then, he and I often joke and reflect back in the early 2000s being some of our best days of our tenure there. Although throughout that, now he did not boycott or keep the classroom at bay. He always said, I still have to teach the Holocaust class, and I have to teach my blues, jazz, and rock class. Those 2, and then I'll do whatever else we're going to do. It doesn't matter. Okay, which is good. But through those years, he took an academic advising team, and I think he shaped them into just an amazing group of people who really went over and above. And for any of you who are students in the room, you know that kind of effort and personal care that each of them gave, and that was under Marc's leadership. So it's Mitchell. What happens? Things change, sometimes hourly, sometimes by the minute. You never know. People move around, right? So some years go by. Marc's the assistant dean on the academic side of the house, and I ended up moving over to the academic side of the house too. I became responsible for the records, the registration, all the things that Amy does, and some others probably, I don't even know. But while I was a registrar, wore that hat there at times, I really spent time trying to study and pick Marc's brain about some of the patterns and when we were offering classes and what classes were being offered and what were the students doing. We looked at all that. And by then, Rich Lucas, I don't think he's here today, but Rich Lucas was on the scene. And he and Marc really connected in terms of building a communication program. And they had some great dynamic classes, and they were doing all this. And they were with me. They'd always pull me in and go, okay, how do we do this? How do we maximize our enrollment? What's going on here? And I finally I remember saying to Rich Lucas, Rich, you can offer picking up dog crap as a class. You can offer it at 9 or at 6 a.m. on Monday mornings. I can fill every seat if Marc's teaching it. Okay? And that's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's true. I could offer that, and I could fill that class. He was that good. Truly, he was that popular. Most of his classes were standing room only because of Marc. Okay? Obviously, people wanted the topics and whatnot, but it was Marc. There were a few semesters when he and I team taught a class called interpersonal communication. And during that time, we tried to, we did some classes separate, but we brought them together. And I remember one of the activities in particular is we had the class watch The Breakfast Club as a movie, if any of you saw that 80s iconic movie. And we often generated and led discussion about the interdynamics and interpersonal relationships and what was happening communication-wise between these 5 individuals in high school, and trying to relate that for students' experience. And I was in awe often, because Marc would jump in and he would go on a tangent, and he would go so far on a tangent that I don't even know where he was. I was lost. I knew the students were lost. And in a panic, and all of a sudden, boom, he brought it back in. He always had a way of trying to bring that back in. Well, not always. There were times when he was still out there and we had to do, Marc, we're back. Okay. I moved on from the Mitchell family in 2017, but I wasn't about to let our friendship dwindle. While far too infrequent, I feel that every time we reconnected, it was just like continuing a chat from earlier that day. Marc had that kind of a persona with him that you could not see him for a day, a week, a month, a year. And you picked up that conversation right there. He always provided, at least for me, that genuine kind of level of comfort. I'm a better person for having known Marc. My guess is that each of you, if you reflect on it, can make that same claim. But now in his absence, I think we carry a responsibility with us. We need to enrich the lives of the people around us, just like he did. So I challenge you to that for his legacy. Cheers to you, Professor, until we share coffee again. I'm going to turn this over to Professor George Wesner. George.
Good morning, everybody. The Rabbi, Marc, the Goldsmith family, friends, which are many, and all the congregants here that knew Marc. These are my thoughts on my friend, Marc Goldsmith, my perspectives on him, which I'll speak on as my teacher, as my friend first and foremost, as a colleague and as a fellow musician. I first met Marc in early 1974. Picture 1974, going back. It was a time of a gas crisis. It was a time of Nixon and Watergate. Wherever we were, student protest. Hey, things don't change all that much, do they? You know? And I decided I don't want engineering school. I do not want to become a mechanical engineer, and so I went to Mitchell College. And there were many students there. I was searching for a direction and purpose, and I was in many ways a fish out of water. Like many students coming to school looking for what was going on and where their life was going to lead them. I signed up for English 101 with a professor named Marc Goldsmith. It was a large, engaging class, many lectures, and we listened to it, talked about current events, humor. There was always active participation with every student, and his method of teaching I'd never seen before, and I loved it. It was open, it was engaging, and he would look at every student, and he had such a sense of discernment, which doesn't come through any didactic training. He would look at them and sense in his way, his own open and honest way, where they were, where they might be going, and he was looking for strengths with that. His method of teaching was open, intriguing, with a hint of spontaneity, like improvisational jazz. Kevin spoke about where the lectures went, and sometimes I'd just say, where would they go? But like a good jazz solo, whether it's piano or saxophone or guitar, it would end right on the point. He had a unique way in discerning all of this. And I remember 2 lectures specifically. One was Shooting an Elephant by Orwell, and another one was from our own New London, A Long Day's Journey into Night with Eugene O'Neill. And this is where Marc excelled, with his humor juxtaposed by his knowledge of the human condition. We're here today because of part of the human condition, the pain and suffering, the loneliness, the alienation. And he would talk about that so clearly and bring out Eugene O'Neill so clearly. And I'm just a kid, I'm 18, I'm listening to this, I go, this makes sense. And I see why people are enjoying this. And, you know, I looked at that, and that was a main theme for me with him. And then right after that, it would be moved by some of his humor to tie it all in. So we went from one spot to another. His introduction to this always showed care, compassion, humanity, equality for all. We spoke about the human struggles and a sense of hope. Marc was an exhorter. Marc always offered hope to the students. They could have a bad day, but he would talk about a particular theme in writing or a dominant theme in literature. He always said, make sure you're clear, concise, and compelling in what you write, the big three. I always remember that. And this is me as a student listening to him. And all of a sudden he talked about being a jazz guitarist. And I'm sitting in the back of the room. I hear, Marc's a jazz guitarist on top of all this? At the time, I was 18 and 19, and how many of you remember the Groton Motor Inn or the Golden Cup? Well, the Steinmans ran it, who I think were belonging to this congregation at one time. Alvin and Ronnie paid my way through college, paid my way through Mitchell. I was the organist and pianist in a band there with men 35, 40 years older than me. And we played there every Friday and Saturday night. And I said, hey, I play keys. I play a little jazz. He goes, yeah, I play guitar. And we started talking, and our conversations, apart from the school, went in a totally different way. He started talking about a distant cousin that he had, too, Jerry Goldsmith, who some of you might remember, the movies of the 60s and 70s. Jerry Goldsmith composed many of the themes for many of the movies. So also from Elvira, New York, or Elmira. So we're talking and we're going on discussing what's happening, and it was a much deeper conversation. And this was fun. This was Marc. And musically, it brought it to a different level, and it was evident with everything. Now, you want to see something really evident with Marc? Go on Facebook today, or TikTok, or whatever you're on, if you're on anything. Kevin posted a couple of postings on Marc, and we're sorry he's passed. I had a picture of him playing with me at Mitchell, which I'll get to. And all of a sudden, 5, 10, 15, 20, over 100 students coming from everywhere saying, we're so sorry, he was the best. He was the best of the best. He was so much fun. He was Mitchell. He did that. Mitchell was known for that, to help people, to look and show their direction, even as a 2-year school, even as a 4-year school. Well, lo and behold, I finally leave. Mitchell was a 2-year school then. And I went in to get a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and beyond. And I served 25 years as a warden running a prison system in Connecticut. And at the same time, I was teaching as a practitioner in residence at local colleges, especially at UNH and the State University system. I retired in 2003, and I get a phone call. They knew I was teaching, and a friend of mine who was an adjunct said, hey, you got to come down and apply for this job in criminal justice. I went through the application process, and lo and behold, I'm back again at Mitchell at my first love. I have to tell you, I enjoyed working in the state. How can you enjoy working as a prison warden, okay? Sounds kind of crazy. But I had good people working for me, which makes all the difference. But when I went back to Mitchell, it was a gift from God. It was a gas. It was unbelievable. I'm now working with all the many professors, far too many. Some are even here today, but those, including Marc Goldsmith, and it took on a whole different realm for me. I readily reconnected with Marc, and we started playing. I said, hey, man, you want to play this gig? You want to do this gig? We did a lot of gigs on campus, gigs being playing out, and we played a lot. My wife became friends with Terry. We had constant, little beach parties at Ocean Beach, hanging out. We went down to the MGM Grand when it opened. We used to go to the Side Door Jazz Club. We enjoyed a lot together. And Marc and I had a tag, if you go on my Facebook account. Marc and I were professors of rock. He thought of that. He goes, hey, man, you got to think of a good name. I said, what do you want? We play jazz, we play rock, we play funk, we play all the standards. We don't say too much about his voice, but he had a great singing voice. you know? Me, on the other hand, I would use a mic if there was a fire and the enunciation system wasn't working. It had the same effect on people. Don't let him, shut him up. Marc sang, and one great song he sang all the time that he loved was, how many of you remember Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying by Jerry and the Pacemakers? It's right after the British invasion. That was like a theme song for him, along with a million others, you know? And so we played at a lot of different places. Some of them, these are big places, right? But Convocation Day at Mitchell, we played every convocation. Founders Day, we always played there. Cultural celebrations, we played the Passover Seder, you know, with all different music that we used, including a little bit of klezmer music, which he used to tell me was Jewish blues, okay? And many other off-campus venues. But I look here, he loved his family. He loved his boys. He loved his wife. Terry's eventual passing brought a depth of conversational reflection. Our conversation was always around music and fun and that, but it got deeper after the passing. And we know this. There's bumps in our life. There's huge, huge craters in our life, as this one will be. And we hope that sometimes those bumps become blips as we get older, few and far between. And sometimes that's not the case, you know. And there was a psalm that the psalmist speaks of that he would mention, that the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. We all get crushed in spirit every once in a while, but he recognized that psalmist. And when you recognize that, he put that into his music too. Sometimes with words, often with notes, okay? It was a much deeper level. Marc had a lot of friends here. He worshiped here. And my daughter was very sick up until this past April. And my daughter was a cancer survivor at 3, and she was one of his students. And she turned 40 this year, but in April she had serious back surgery. Marc said, hey, George, we're going to put her onto the prayer chain that you have here, Rabbi. Her name is on here if you check it during April. And you prayed for her. She had a successful back surgery. She's doing fine and everything. But, you know, I'm thankful for Marc for that side, the spiritual side. I retired right before COVID from Mitchell for almost 20 years, and then right after COVID, we continued our relationship. We met for breakfast almost every 2-3 months or every month, and he was always grateful, humorous, reminiscing with, we would reminisce and have occasional jobs together. Right when he was starting to get sick, I saw him at the condo that he lived at. I said, Marc, what can I bring you? I was going to go up to Rain's Deli and get him some good chopped liver and get him some blintzes and get him a good, juicy sandwich, you know, with corned beef or pastrami. He goes, no, I don't want that. I go, what do you want, Marc? He goes, I want a big sausage pizza with mushrooms and give me a chocolate shake. So I'm parked on Pequot Avenue with this box. I almost spilt it 100 times, but I brought it to him. He couldn't walk very easily. He was on his air, but he enjoyed that very much. And then I haven't talked to him for a while. And I left him a message, and then I got the call from Zach. He goes, my dad's in hospice. Some few weeks went by, and it happened quickly. He went into hospice. I went to see him one day before he died. And I went in there and talked to him. I saw him. He was sleeping the entire time with labored breathing. I said a little prayer in my own way over him, you know, and I said, Marc, good man, I hope to see you soon. And he passed the next morning at 10:33 a.m. He passed on. But one of the reassuring words that you shared with me, Zach, was that he passed peacefully. He wasn't struggling. He almost had a smile on his face. And that's Marc. We could talk about all the deep things I talked about, the words of David, the psalmist, the pain and misery that life gives. But right after all that, when we hurt very bad, Marc would be there with humor to juxtapose that, as I said before, and to make one person smile, be happy, and never talk about himself. Somebody mentioned it very well. You'd have to hear from us, as Kevin and as Zach said. I'm going to just end with a song that we loved very much, that he loved. If you look on the internet, or if you look up Michel Colombier from France, there's a song called Emanu-El, aptly named after this temple. And it's a beautiful song. And sometimes, I want to leave this as my last few words, sometimes music will touch our heart where words fail. And in honor of Mark and Terry and the family, I want to play this on the piano as a goodbye to Mark and for us, if you allow me. I have to turn it back on.
Thank you, George. So in just a second here, Chazan Cherry is going to chant a traditional prayer. It's entitled El Male Rachamim, God full of compassion. And within it, you'll hear Marc's Hebrew name. Sherry, remind me what that is?
It is Mendel Hirsch ben Moshe.
Yeah. Herschel.
Herschel. Did I not say Herschel?
Yeah. So listen for that inside of it. Just a few more words. I've always disliked the term celebration of life. Whenever anyone would say, well, we want to have a celebration of life. Like, come on, give me a break. I mean, we're mourning. How could it be a celebration? Listening to all of the various stories and various perspectives on Marc's life, I've been smiling the whole time. And I think that's what the aim was here, to really truly celebrate a magnificent life. So this really does, maybe my perspective today changed my thoughts on a celebration of life. I might embrace that idea a little more fully in the future. But I also want to say that I had the pleasure of sitting with Marc quite a lot, usually in Cherry's office. But in these closing days in the hospital, and David and Zach, I just want to tell you that he loved you fully. And he loved you for who you are and who you've become. And he is, I want to say is, extraordinarily proud of the extraordinary men that you've become. And that I felt was from the bottom of his heart, his love for you and who you are, in all of your accomplishments. Zach, and all of the daring and crazy things that you do. He loves you. So, Hamale, please rise.
El Male Rachamim Shochin Bamrumim Hamtzeh Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina Im Kedoshim U'Tohorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Mendel Herschel ben Moshe Shehalach L'olamo Ba'al Harachamim Yastirehu Beseter Kenafav L'olamim Bitzror HaChaim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar Amen.
And we'll conclude with Kaddish Tom. Yitgadal v'yitgadash Shemei Rabbah B'alma divrach thirutei v'yamlich malchutei B'chayachon u'vyomechon U'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala u'bizman kariv imru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mivarach le'olam omei amaya. Yit barach v'yish tabach v'yit pa'ar v'yit ramam v'yit naseh v'yit adar v'yit aleh v'yit alal Shemei dekudesha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata damiram bi'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu be'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru. Amen. May God's name be sanctified and praised. May God's design for this world and for us and our people lead us to justice and good. May God, who has decreed that all who live must die, teach us to accept death, yet with all our hearts desire life. May God, whose plan for us is sometimes hidden, reveal the way to become stronger when we face the trials of life. And may God, Oseh HaShalom, the creator of peace, be for us a source of comfort, strength, and peace. And let us together say, Amen. So that concludes this part of our celebration of Marc's life. I encourage you, please, to stick around. We have a little food prepared, and so enjoy that. But most importantly, there were just a few of us who spoke, but I know each one of you has your own stories about Marc, and so please gather around standing in a circle or sitting in a circle and share some of those stories, okay? And then when you leave here, take them with you and share them with somebody you don't even know, all right? And that's how we can really celebrate his life. Thanks for coming, everybody.